Well, I mean, it is September 29th, or is it the middle of July? Because all we've seen the last 4, 5, 6 days has been 80-degree temperatures. It's definitely not cool out, although it has been fairly cool in the mornings. By cool, I mean 50s. But we are wearing sweatshirts, sweatpants, maybe even a vest the first couple hours of light, because things cool down at night. It is the time of year where, regardless of how warm it gets during the day, I know it hit 80 again, how many days in a row, but it's cooler at night. It's cooler start to the day. It's not like your typical summer where it's stagnant and humid and hot. A lot of people are turning the air off in the evenings, right? Just like we are. We're turning the air off. It's getting cooler at night. It feels good. So things are happening. So regardless of what you see for highs, rest assured, water temps are starting to consistently stall, at least, and even decline a hair. We're still seeing low 70-degree water temp, which is crazy. We're probably going to see that into October, which is just a few days away, which I don't know if I've seen that in a long time, where we're still at 72, 73 degrees as we're tiptoeing on October's door. And what that's doing is it's stalling out some of the fish behavior. We're going to talk about a lot of bass fishing. We did some walleye fishing, caught some walleyes. It's going to be more specifically tied to a timing thing or water clarity thing, because we talk about the fall turnover, right? That's when the water changes and everything fluctuates and everything flip-flops, right? The cooler water disperses from the warmer water and yada, yada, yada. You can search the turnover and exactly what that means if you want to research some more. But we call it the fall turnover, that transition period. That's when the walleyes, generally speaking, really want to start doing their thing. They move shallow, they start to get aggressive. You can catch them on moving baits. That hasn't happened yet. It has not quite happened yet. I'm hopeful that, looking at the 10-day forecast down the road, with some much cooler nights, much cooler high temperatures, 20-degree drops, things like that, we're going to see some consistency finally, where those water temps aren't just going to do this. They're finally going to start to go like this. And to me, that's when things start to turn on. It's coming. I promise. It's coming. It's right around the corner. So it's sneaking up on us here pretty quick. So that's something that you want to think about, is we're going to have a little bit of fall turnover coming. Start planning your future fishing trips here the next few weeks, because I think things are going to get better. Exactly how are we catching these fish? We are making a little bit of a change. We are fluctuating a little bit on what we're doing to catch these fish. I'm going to go through a three-prong progression, a 3-point progression on how I'm fishing a jig worm right now, Ned rig, because we're seeing a variance in what works and what doesn't work. But we've seen that one of these 3 ways has a positive outcome. And sometimes, if they're aggressive and you put the bait in front of a bass's face, they're going to eat any one of these. But this tends to be the 3 ways, where did I put, we're catching our fish. First and foremost, Ned rig fishing still is hot, still is working, still is catching a pile of fish, still is making it happen. So I'm going to talk about a Ned rig as our first go-to option, because I think it's just very versatile. I can make contact with the bottom. It's kind of a cheat code for bass, cheat code for walleye. We've caught a bunch of walleyes on Ned rigs recently as well. So we're starting off with a Ned rig. And what I've done a lot lately is I've had a lot of guide trips with 2 or 3 people in the boat, even 4. And I'll give them one of each of these, and we'll talk through which each of these means, just to see if something's working better than the next. But for starters, let's just progress from smallest to biggest, and we'll show you why we're doing this. Here's your Ned rig, right? We got just a little Ned head. This is a 1/6 ounce Ned head. You can do a 1/5. You can do whatever, a quarter, 3/32, whatever it might be. And I'm doing chartreuse. I got the Ned ringer on there, small profile, 3-inch bait. Hits the bottom of the lake, does something like this. That little ring body and tail, super cool, super effective bait. That's the Ned ringer from Mr. Twister. Easy way to catch a pile of fish. So that's one of my progressions. The next progression is we're taking a very similar approach to that, just adding a little bit more meat. So this is going to be a full-size TRD. It's not the small one. It's a standard larger turd. So you're talking about a 3.5-inch, 4-inch presentation. And I switched to this because this is now a floating bait. So now this is going to have the same impact with the bottom. This bait's going to float up. It has a different look, has a different feel. I can really put that bait down there and just have my clients shake. Can do nothing. That thing kind of sits like this and just kind of flutters and moves around. Gives that fish a different look. So you have your shorter version Ned rig, you have your larger turd. Two different presentations, honestly, two different applications, a little heavier jig head on this turd just to get down there quicker and make contact with the bottom. I'm using a similar setup on both these. In fact, I'm using a similar setup on all three of these that I'm going to show you. I got the 2500 or 3000 series Shimano reel, 15 pound or 20 pound maiden braid, depending on how aggressive the angler is, and an 8 or 10 pound fluorocarbon leader. That's going to work exceptionally well. I got a 7-foot medium light or medium action rod. You can do a 7.2, you can do a 7.6, you can do a 6.8. I think you get the idea, but that's the setup. So you have smaller version Ned rig, beef up to a little larger Ned rig jig worm hybrid with a bait that floats. And last but not least, I'm looking for profile, I'm looking to plummet quick, I'm looking for a reaction strike, and I'm giving them a little more to eat. And that's going to be my all-terrain mighty jig, which is a longer shank jig. It's not your traditional Ned head, right? It's going to have a longer shank jig head. This is a jig worm head, and I'm fishing a full-size Kamita, a full-size Senko. That's going to be a 5 to 6 inch presentation. That's going to fall really quick. These are a heavier bait. It's going to fall real quick. These do not float, and I'm hopping it along the bottom. I'm getting more of an impulse bite. I'm going to get something that shoots through the weeds, covers the water column, longer shank hook, more aggressive. I'm not trying to dance this in front of their face. I am dropping this down to get these fish to bite. So that's going to be my 3-prong progression. And like I said, in recent days, I've had clients all trying something different. And sometimes one of these shine, sometimes they all work. But we tend to find that one of these presentations, one of these ways to present the bait really gets a bit better than the others. I'd say about 75% of the time that's the case. One of these three ways of doing it outproduces the other, and we all switch to that. But that's been kind of my 3-prong aggression. Shorter Ned rig, a little bigger Ned rig, heavier jig head, something that floats, longer shank, mighty head, jig worm head, full size Kamita or Senko, bomb it down to those fish. And right now we're finding a lot of fish still deep. I hate to say it, I'm really hoping we could be burning the bank, covering water, doing that. We're still using a lot of spinning rods to catch our consistent number of fish, and we're into 15 to 25 feet of water. A lot of the coontail, especially on Minnetonka, still growing deep. A lot of fish coming 20 to 25 feet of water the last few days. Same old summertime patterns. Now we have flipped. We've talked about flipping a heavier jig and heavy cover, whether it's milfoil, coontail. There are a lot of fish going against the dock lines, of course, like they have been the last month or two. So there is opportunities to catch fish those ways. But if anyone's been out there against the bank right now, or in that bank to 7-foot range, which we love to burn through this time of year typically, you just can't. You can't throw a chatterbait or a spinnerbait or a shallow diving crankbait. The weeds are still there. Nothing's really happening quite yet. We're starting to see a very, 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 very small amount of deep weed die-off or deep weed transition where, okay, maybe it's a little more sparse in 22 to 25 than it was a couple weeks ago, but it's still present, it's still there. And all we're doing is really making, I can see my contour or my navigation line, my trail line on my GPS. I'm only making about 5-10 yard increment moves inward. I'm not making big moves. I'm making 2-3 foot depth change inward marks than I have the last couple weeks. So we're not seeing that giant shallow push yet. My suspicion tells you a week from now when we have another one of these conversations, things are going to start to change. So I was hopeful a week or so back. We started talking about some cooler weather. I got a little excited. I apologize. I probably am the reason that it got warm again. I love warm weather, but we've had enough of it. I'm coaching 6th grade football and it's hot. It's stagnant in the evenings. We're sweating. I want to throw a hoodie on. I want to throw a hoodie on and coach football. I want to throw a hoodie on and go fishing. My hoodie's off by 9-10 o'clock in the morning already. I'm back into my Blackfish sun shirts all afternoon, evening. So that's what we're seeing. That's what we're expecting. The walleyes, they're starting to be window bite. We talked about this again before. They're going to be eating the first couple hours of light, the last couple hours of light, and that hour after dark. They are making some shallow movements to feed, but they'll do that all year. And we're catching them on moving baits, some smaller swim baits, 3-inch baits, 3-inch mayors, things like that. We're catching them on some cranks. We're catching them on jig and a crawler. We're catching them underneath a bobber with maybe a gulp of live leech or a piece of crawler underneath that. Finding live leeches in the metro right now, very difficult finding good size red tails in the metro right now. Good luck. So we are actually using night crawlers as our live bait option for walleye fishing, and it's working. It's catching some fish. Otherwise, like I said at the beginning of this video, we're still catching them on a Ned rig. We're still catching them on a variety of other things. So if you want to go walleye fishing, you can throw a Ned rig. You got to be where the fish are. You're probably going to catch a lot of bass, especially around here, just because the walleyes are kind of still a little in between where they should be. But you can definitely throw a Tikka minnow or a jig and wrap, a bait like that. That can cover water. That can be effective. You can definitely fish some type of live bait underneath a float. No problem. I got a couple setups back here I've been using. However, be prepared to catch bass and a number of other things, bait stealing bluegills, number of things happen there. But that's kind of what we're looking at. I'm really hopeful in a week from now, we got some moving baits going, we got some of this transition stuff happening, and we can just finally get away from summer, because it's no longer summer, it's fall. Hello, it's now fall, it has been. Let's get into those patterns, let's get after it, let's go have some fun. But until then, hopefully some of this stuff works for you. Try that 3-prong progression. Ned rig, the larger Ned rig that floats, heavier bait. We talked about that. Those are ways to get bit right now. Foolproof plan to get bit, catching some bass here in the Twin Cities, and you can fish this even on some of the mid-depth rocks. So if you do have a lake where water temps are starting to drop a bit and the fish are starting to go onto some of those hard bottom areas, all three of these will work there just the same. So give that a shot. Get out there, catch some fish. Next time we talk to you, it'll be October. Crazy to think, especially with what we've seen the last few weeks, but it will be October nonetheless, and eventually, I promise you, these fish are going to do what we want them to do, and we're going to have a typical fall bite window. But until then, go out there, have some fun, be safe, catch you next time.